Certified local government program, Mr. Haley, and I see one of my favorite men over there sitting in his blue jacket. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine, thanks.
Thank you, it's always a pleasure to see you.
I appreciate it, everybody.
Yes, sir.
Grants through the process that we're not eligible for right now. We are eligible then under if we become a CLG, we become eligible for federal historic preservation funds. This came up recently with the school in Harrington that we weren't a CLG and they couldn't apply through that process to get funds. There's a national register process that we would get to comment on before it went up to the state. And there's opportunities for assistance and training through this program for historic preservation. Currently, there's 137 local governments with ordinances. 82 of them are CLGs, with 12 of those being counties or cities. The city of Brunswick is a CLG currently, so we could partner with them or have a separate historic preservation commission. I'll get into the details because there's specific requirements about the makeup of the historic preservation commission. To become a CLG, the board's going to have to enact a historic preservation ordinance and create a historic preservation commission or merge with the city's one. There is a model ordinance that they have that I can get you all a copy of. The ordinance would establish a historic preservation commission to provide for designation or of individual structures or districts. This is kind of the front end, what you would see on the ordinance amendment about what it actually does. This committee would issue typically a certificate of appropriateness for changes to structures either in the districts or on the list for there's an appeal procedure and other typical normal things that we normally put in ordinances. Right now we do have an historic district survey. I'm sure you all read it. It's exciting. It's online. We did it in 1996 and updated in 2009. There were 810 structures on the mainland that were surveyed, 485 on St. Simons, and then 53 over in Jekyll, but there's 133, and I'll explain that's because the 53 are representative of that island because there's a large number of folks in that island that are ranch houses that are eligible now because ranch houses are now 50 years old, so they're now eligible for historic structures. And there's 39 in Seattle. This is a typical page out of the book. You know, showing what the district is and where it's all located and everything. There's a large number of charts and everything going through there. Since then, as I said, we've had two main types of structures that are now eligible. It's called the American Small House. People would call it the Levittown style house that was built right after World War II for all the returning soldiers. It's a smaller house. And then what evolved after everyone started making some more money is the ranch style house. And both those are now of age and they're eligible for that. So we have large areas that are now, including whole subdivisions, are now eligible for National Register District historic areas. To meet the eligibility requirements, and there's minimum requirements. I'm going to not skip all of that. But number 3 is we've got to maintain that survey, and that survey is getting of age right now, so it would probably have to be updated in there, and then we have some minimal staffing requirements on this one. And then you go through the whole process, you participate in the National Register, monitoring, and area back at the bottom if you don't get out. You have to have, and I alluded to this, that you have to have a preservation commission, minimum 3 members. First line I highlighted is they've got to have some knowledge and participation in historic preservation. You just can't appoint, Joe Smo off the street and everything. And you're supposed to have, if you don't have that, you have to go through a process where you say you can't find anyone. So, and then as part of their normal background and work, they have to be involved with the historic preservation. So you just don't appoint folks, you used as the example here the banker, but you appoint a banker that has some interest in doing historic preservation, and as part of his banking practices, he funds historic preservation areas. So. And there's also responsibility for us from a from federal level about what we have to do to maintain recommended specific district sites and everything about review, certificate of appropriateness. I had a commission in Macon when I was there that had very large historic districts, and they met and determined what were historic preservation issues and certificate of appropriateness. Even Aaron's Out on the Water had to go through it because they had the school law up on the Coleman Hill, and they had an addition. They had to go through the whole process, so there's no exemptions on this thing. You have to have it like an outreach program, you review everything, participate in the grant writings and reviews on these things. There's responsibilities from the board. This is where it starts getting funny part. You either have to appoint a staff member or hire professional staff or contract with one. Those are where you can do things through there. Each year, mandatory training requirement that you have to attend at least one training and educational session for that we got bypassed for the ability to apply for a grant.
Grants for
the
historic preservation?
The Harrington School Preservation, because we were not a certified local government.
Okay.
It's in the mission of the board that they decided before I got on it, Mike got on it, that one of our missions, like number 4 or 5, is historic preservation. And there's a lot of historic preservation opportunities in Glynn County. I don't want to fund it out of my tax dollars, local tax dollars, but there are plenty of grants that are available that we could be applying for and probably get, but because we're not a certified local government, we do not get those grants. This is a step in which we can go to get grants to help with our historic preservation.
And how much, I mean, what kind of grant money are we talking here?
Billions. But I didn't know all the things we have to do to get it, so that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking, because if it's gonna be $1 million, it's gonna cost us $3 million a year to do it, and that's what I was just inquiring.
David, I mean, 'cause actually, we did, those of us who were on the commission earlier, when we went through the creating of the African American Historic Preservation Commission, Ms. Church did talk about this in her presentation, and it's included in the background research information. I know it was a lot of it, and she included the survey that was done in 2009. And then when she did the training at Selden, she touched on that, her and Jeannie Syriac, who's the state director for African American Historic Preservation. My suggestion would be to look at working through that joint commission and possibly working with the city's current, if that's what's necessary, historic society board or whatever that is. I think if we've got to put together some resources, and Judge Douglas is the chairman of that group, and they're currently looking at ways to try to get a director, somebody who has historic preservation background, and already looking at these things, and make up a lot of the history here locally. But it does turn into a lot of economic development. If you all remember in the training and in the presentation, that historic preservation, that's why Macon has been so successful at it. It has turned into a lot of economic development for the city and their county. And that's one of the reasons why we were looking at this. Doing rehab work creates more jobs than anything else. And I think that we have an opportunity to pull everybody to the table for this. And yes, grants are one way to bring in resources, but a lot of individuals give to historic preservation as well. And they will give, especially since we're in the heart of the Gullah Geechee corridor, they will give toward that effort. And we just have such a rich history here. I think we have a real opportunity if we do this right. And we've already laid the groundwork for this. actually, we've been ahead of the game.
All this has started because Mr. Fendick has come and talked to me and Mr. Howard about a historic structure on the mainland that could use some grant money. Would you like to talk about that real quick, sir?
Well, let me just say briefly
Yes.
that when I got interested in the CLG, it was because of heritage tourism, which is one of the biggest economic factors that Glynn County has the potential for. This thing is an entree to grant money, to protection of certain historic sites. Archaeological surveys are included, it's not just structures. It can be as broad as the commission wants to make the ordinance. It can be non-restrictive to personal property, because Lord knows anything I touch is over 50 years old. You know, we're coming up on the 50th anniversary of when Earl Harbert and I started the Georgia Historical Society. And I see what can happen when small things are done that affect large things. An instance is at Hoffel Plantation, 1,200 acres at the top of Glynn County. We are now working with the Garden Club of Georgia to reconstruct an azalea camellia garden, 10 to 15 acres. Think of what an attraction that'll be to people coming down I-95 to see Hoffel. And of course, Hoffel is owned by the state. But those of us who have, I've been a trustee for 42 years out there. Gordon Strava took my place as trustee, and we've got a local board of people from Oak Grove all the way to St. Simons that help the state, assist the state, do a lot of the work. That's what can be done. The CLG can give us access to grant money, but they'll also do one more thing. The Historical Society, the other Jekyll Island Authority, Brunswick Historic Foundation, Orrin Douglas's venture out here, which we're working with them on. And these things are all doing their own thing. To do what? To preserve, but to attract visitors. This commission could help to unify the efforts of everything from the Fort Frederica Association to Hoffel, to the canal project people that want to preserve certain areas of the canal. And furthermore, it would help me work with the CRC to put in what we call the Altamaha Delta Historic Project, which would incorporate all of the Altamaha Delta into one consolidated, unanimous effort to attract tourists to the historic preservation. Once you get off 95 and get them over to 17, it's going to benefit the rest of Glynn County too. That's why I support this. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Fendick. Questions, commissioners?
Well, I support this because we talked about this in the work session and the training. If you all will pull up that manual, you got all of this stuff is in there. And I think this is an excellent idea. And it will boost economic development in this entire county.